Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 78 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is David Howe.
My name is Patrick Nisley.
And my name is Matthew Stoner.
We've got a very special guest with us on this evening that we're recording. Modern Vintage Gamer joins us on the show tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us, MVG.
Thanks for having me on, fellas. Great to be here.
Oh, yeah. Very excited. Big fan of your channel and the Spawncast and Nate the Hate. I listen to all that shit.
Yeah,
so it's
awesome.
It's a pleasure to speak to you today. On tonight's episode, we're going to be talking all about the Gigaleak, the massive leak that has come out of Nintendo over the past year. But especially this summer, tons and tons of data has been leaking out of Nintendo. It's been the biggest video game related leak, I think, in the history of video games. So we're going to be talking a lot about that, some of our favorite things we found from the leak, some of the ethics of that leak, and then also what this might mean for the future of video games. Very excited to talk about that with y'all today. And then, of course, we got a lot of other news for you guys. A bunch of stuff dropped right after we did our episode last week. Smash update, Pikmin 3. We have a Nintendo investor meeting. We got lots of stuff to go over with that and a lot more. So stay tuned for that. Other than that, how's everybody doing today? We having a pretty good day?
Oh, no, not too bad. Pretty busy today. But feel pretty good. I had lots of coffee, so...
Very good.
Me too. Lots of coffee, very busy. It's so weird juggling my work and taking care of my kids. It's the weirdest. It's surreal sometimes.
Still not used to it, huh?
No, because it's just anytime like we'll be playing video games and then I'll get a call from my boss. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
those aren't supposed to cross.
Yeah.
What about you, MVG? You've been having a pretty good week?
Yeah, man. Busy as always. Obviously, juggling YouTube with with the stuff that I do on the side as well. So there's always stuff going on in my world. I just work, man. That's what I do. Like, I was telling someone the other day that, I want to really I want to go on a vacation. Like it's been a long time. We can all appreciate that none of us have been on a vacation in a while, but it's not really safe to go anywhere.
Right.
Most of us want to stay home. So the only thing that I know how to do is just work. So I've just been pretty much working nonstop since March, since we started lockdown.
Right. Well, appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to talk with us tonight.
Oh, no problem, man.
Very good.
It's great to be here.
We got a couple shout outs, Patrick.
Yeah, that's right. So a couple episodes back, we did an interview with David Wise, and on the YouTube video for that, Ninny Moose, I think I'm saying that right?
Something like that.
Gave us a nice compliment that a lot of people who interview David Wise don't have informed questions, but we were on the ball. So thanks for that note, boosting our ego.
That's sweet. We'll interview more rare composers.
And then our last episode was about motion controls, which sparked a great discussion on our Discord. Emma started it off with talking about the Super Mario Party motion control games and stuff, mini games, and lots of people commented on our Discord about that. Amir, DCD, Kyle, Summer, Celeste, thanks for that. And also Matt, our friend Matt, Steve Irwin, David, he really was excited about your OnlyFans joke, I think.
Yeah. OnlyFans is still under construction, but once it's done, you guys will be the first to know.
And then we've got a giveaway, Fall Guys, which is maybe it's just the circles that I follow online, but this game seems to be getting a lot of traction with in the online community. We've got a couple of Steam codes to give away for Fall Guys, so stay tuned to our Twitter for one of those. And then the other one, if you're listening, and just post our show somewhere on some social media. Let us know you did it. Tag us, that kind of stuff. And we will give that away in the next week or two.
Yeah, that's right. It's a Steam code. Unfortunately, this isn't a reveal that Fall Guys is coming to Switch right now. Yeah. But also special thanks to our friends at Devolver Digital for hooking up those codes for us.
Yeah, and so if you too want to be shouted out, then reach out to us, give us some comments, that kind of stuff. We love subscriptions, reviews, all that kind of stuff. Share our podcast. And with that, we will get into the news and rumors for the week because we got a lot of them, right? And David, you were kind of joking about this before we started recording, but there are a couple of pieces of news that happened between us recording and releasing our last episode. So we'll quickly go over those. There was a Smash Ultimate update. They added a new stage out of nowhere, small battlefield. They added several other little things like that. You can now put all kinds of different music on like the Final Destination and Battlefield stages. They changed some of the menus and stuff. They adjusted matchmaking and the elite threshold. I've played a little bit on Small Battlefield and it's fine. I like it.
I love it. Yeah.
It's a nice to have on the stage.
I love like the Battlefield, like simple stages or Final Destination. So any kind of variant of that where I have a little bit of platforming, but still it's mostly competitive. I love that stuff.
I did hear that the online is better now. Is any truth to that? I've heard that from multiple people saying it's they've tweaked it somehow and it's running better than it used to.
It's supposed to give you better, preferred rules and that kind of stuff, right? And also just a little bit cleaner. But I haven't noticed anything on my end, but I haven't played a ton.
I personally haven't noticed, but yeah, apparently there have been some tweaks to the netcode. It's not like the full rollback that everybody wants. Like they patched into the PC version of Melee,
right?
The PC version of Melee,
the
as if
PC
it's like a Nintendo release. But that would be awesome. But it's definitely a step in the right direction. They're like actually addressing the fact that the online is total ass. So it's good to see.
And then we were kind of talking about, is Nintendo going to announce something before that investor meeting on August 6th? Well, they did right before it. They announced the day before Pikmin 3 Deluxe coming out in October. I think it's October 30th. I didn't write that down here, but so it's got the deluxe part, right? I think we should talk about that. It's got a co-op for like the whole game, it sounds like. Some additional like side story mission stuff, some achievements, some other maybe little tweaks, but those are some of the big ones. I'm excited about this. I've never really played a Pikmin game, and the co-op really gets me excited because I feel like I can play that with my kid then. And
is it couch co-op or online co-op? Both?
I would imagine it's just couch, but knowing
I'm
Nintendo,
not sure. I would be very fucking surprised if there was online co-op.
Me too.
Pikmin 3, honestly.
Yeah, I would
be.
say couch co-op for that one. But if you haven't played Pikmin, if you haven't played a Pikmin game, this one you'll really get a kick out of this. It's excellent. It's probably one of the best Wii U games and one of the best-selling Wii U games as well. So it's definitely, if you haven't tried it, I would say definitely check it out.
And I guess I have heard it's one of the easier of the Pikmin games, but they've also, one of the things that sparked in my memory is they added some difficulty adjustments to this, or settings.
Oh, cool.
So that you can adjust the difficulty. So that's good. And you mentioned
this is another one of those like kind of random Twitter drops, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like this was probably something that maybe would have been in that E3 Direct had it happened, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe the announcement's a little far out, but we know Nintendo loves to just kind of sit on stuff, right?
Yeah. It's definitely weird to see Paper Mario and this game get announced in the way they were. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the world we live in now. It's just cats and dogs getting along. It's crazy.
And then that WWE game gets mentioned in a direct, right?
That's the one that really deserves the spotlight, I think.
And then you mentioned it being one of the better selling Wii U games. Well, interestingly, I don't know, I can't think of the right word, shittily, this game was delisted from the Wii U eShop. So Nintendo's done this a couple times, right? With Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, with the Bayonetta games. And I didn't even realize that, because I remember when it happened with Donkey Kong, then some people were like, oh no, they put it back up. And I was like, oh, good. Maybe it was a weird thing, but I guess it went away again after that. Do y'all remember that? Like I didn't realize it went back up and went back off. And I also remember it being just in North America for that one, but maybe this one sounds like it's everywhere.
Either way, it's kind of scummy, right? I mean, it's not something you like to see. It's, because I think it was on the Wii U eShop for like $20, right?
Yeah.
It was like way discounted basically. And now obviously it's going to be $60 for the deluxe version on the Switch. Not like you're not going to be able to find copies of it like physically if you want to find it. I'm sure it's not like they're making new ones, but you can get that pretty much anywhere. But I don't know. If you're out there and you have a Wii U and you don't have a Switch and you're affected by this, I guess let us know.
Yeah, that's the.
It doesn't seem like too many people,
right? That's the point that keeps getting made. Is like who does it really affect? But it still seems like a bad move, right? Or like a kind of like why then? Even if it doesn't affect them, it's just kind of shitty.
Yeah, it's. I've heard the word or the term anti-consumer being thrown around. I don't necessarily agree that it's anti-consumer, but it's not a great practice. And yeah, I mean, if you want to get a copy of that game for the Wii U, you can still get it from GameStop for $20.
Yeah,
I mean, but now obviously, it's probably going to be something that gets bought because collectors and people are going to want to get the Wii U version before it. You can't find any more copies of it. But it's not cool that Nintendo does that stuff, but it's also something that you kind of expect them to do anyway. Like Mario 3D World is kind of rumored to be coming out right at some point. Hopefully, when they announce the Mario stuff later this year. And I think that'll go through the same process. I mean, they'll announce the new 3D World game and then they'll delist the current one off the shop. So it's also, the Wii U eShop, I mean, its days are numbered. And this is just another kind of, nail in the coffin for it, right? I mean, it's probably, I can't speculate how long it's got left, but it's probably got 12 to 18 months, before it goes away.
But it also gets into the whole issue of digital rights and like that we've bought into all these digital platforms. And it's not just Nintendo, like Forza games get delisted after a while and stuff. And it's just kind of an issue. It's a whole separate conversation, though.
So if I'm understanding you right, MVG, you're saying now is the time to go buy 5 digital copies of Super Mario 3D World for the Wii U.
You're going to be able to resell those. Yeah, just rake in that.
I've got a Wii U with 5 copies of this game on it. Who wants it?
You may want to do that. And by the way, I don't know anything, by the way. I'm not, I don't have any info. So.
It's all good.
And then,
it's all speculation.
Yeah, there you go. So Nintendo did have its investor meeting then on August 6th after that big announcement to take home. And everybody was like, they got to announce something, right? Because what else are they going to show? Well, they had some shit to show. At the investor meeting, which is how much fucking money they've been making in this last quarter. So this was just May to June of this year, the first quarter of their fiscal year, which runs, March to June, I should say. Over 400% increase in profits, like over $1 billion US. And in particular, Animal Crossing, right? And like the sales for Animal Crossing, it shot up onto number 2 in their top 10 software sales. So like 22.4 million units of Animal Crossing New Horizons were sold.
That's so crazy.
And that's just through June.
Yeah. Not unexpected. I mean, like, remember, Animal Crossing was one of those games that whenever it came out, you go to your Switch friends list and just literally every single person is playing. I saw more like concurrent players on my friends list at once, like during that weekend than I've ever seen before.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's definitely some really popular stuff.
What are we at? Like a 30, just over 30% attach rate for Animal Crossing to Switch owners?
You do the math for us, Matt. Yeah. There's 61. So here's the other talking point, right? Like that there's 61.4 million Switches that have been sold through the end of June, right? And 22 something million.
Just around 30%, maybe just over under.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And that also puts the Switch really close to being to outselling the NES, Famicom, probably has by now, right? Because
I'd imagine so.
That's through June. And I also think about a lot of this is due to lockdown, right? Gaming being really big, and how Switches weren't available during a lot of this time period. Like, I have a friend who is not a hardcore gamer, but was like, I want to get a gaming console. He lives by himself. And I was like, you should get a Switch because you can play with me and we can play a lot. And he wanted to, but he couldn't find one. So we just bought an Xbox. Like,
ouch.
That's just one anecdote, right? But I wonder if there are a lot of people out there that were casually like, I might get it, but then they couldn't find it and gave up, and how many other billions of dollars they could have made.
I think Animal Crossing, I was going to say, I mean, the pandemic obviously is a very horrible, unfortunate part of, all our lives.
Yes.
but the timing that Animal Crossing came out was perfect. Really, I mean,
Yeah.
It just, I mean, that was the game that everyone wanted, everyone needed. You know, when everything just went to shit back in March, and that game really, you know, got a lot of people through some really rough times. And I think it's just going to continue to sell so many copies. You know, I don't know where it's going to end, but it's just killing it right now.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those evergreen titles, I think. And especially like with this rollout of features that they're doing too, it's like at any point when you buy in, you'll be getting an even bigger game than the people that got it on day one. You know what I mean? So I think it's going to continue to sell well. I don't think that Nintendo expected this at all. Otherwise, I think they would have had more content in there on launch for the game. Not that it's like a light game, but it's, you know, they're adding stuff constantly because I think they're trying to keep up with the constant demand of everything. So yeah, I mean, conspiracy theories that Nintendo did the pandemic to boost Animal Crossing sales aside, it is definitely a good time for Nintendo. I think it's funny too that it's like this 2020 is like the year where we're not getting a ton of information from Nintendo, and everybody on the internet is like, what is Nintendo doing? This is their time to like seize the moment. And like, you know, if they had announcements, they'd be doing great.
They're making bank, man.
Exactly. Yeah.
They don't need to, you know, they can just continue as they are because they've made so much money, you know, this year. So
we've got like hard data here to like prove that Nintendo doesn't need to do anything for the rest of the year and be totally fine.
One of the discussion points where it was like, if you're comparing these Animal Crossing sales numbers to other Nintendo IPs, it like has oversold the entire Metroid franchise and the game sales of that entire franchise.
Oh man, that's sad.
That is
cool, I guess.
So it's just like on that topic of like, yeah, maybe Nintendo should make a new Metroid game, but from a business perspective, they don't need to.
Yeah, I think it's so easy for us to get caught up in our corner of this as being people who are really into it and like forget that like they're making money off of everybody else. They don't need to please us, you know?
Totally. But Reggie, still please do our podcast.
And I think just real quickly before we move on too, I think it's interesting to see in the list of million seller titles during this time period that they put out that Ring Fit has now sold almost 4 million units, which is another really hard to find thing and has been doing really well in this era of everybody stuck at home.
And a shout out to Clubhouse Games 51 Worldwide Classics for selling over 1 million units.
There you go.
Huge fan.
That's my game of the year so far. I love that game.
You and Dave.
Honestly, same. Yeah, I've been playing that game nonstop. I'm a Hanafuda addict, so I'll be playing that game a lot more. And I really hope to see some DLC. Although it's the same people who made Super Mario Party, so I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah.
And so, speculation about all those Mario games and rumors about those. Maybe at E3 they were going to show that off and maybe kind of tie it in more to this, the Super Nintendo world theme park that's coming, which has been delayed. I think that maybe that. If you think about that, that might make a lot of sense that maybe they've decided to reshuffle things around in light of that. And then there's been a leak of some alleged videos of, that somebody just found on Vimeo somewhere of the theme park and like that shows off some of the like AR that they're using for these rides and stuff. Did you all get a chance to watch any of these before they got taken down? I think there's still mirrors somewhere, but...
Yeah, you can find mirrors on like Reddit comments, like threaded Reddit comments. And they were really cool. It tells you how you're going to use like whatever app they use in, Super Nintendo World and how it's going to connect with the Mario Kart ride and some like instructions of how you interact with the ride and play it. Looks pretty cool. Looks really fun.
Yeah.
Mm. I know, unfortunately, the US version of Super Nintendo World has been, I think, delayed indefinitely, right? Which is not surprising. But yeah, it's a shame. Hopefully, they let Americans into Japan soon because I'd still like to visit.
And then Sega put out its like financial report recently too for the first quarter, and people were kind of going through that and realized that it, at least according to what they've put on there, maybe Shin Megami Tensei 5 is coming in the first part of 2021. Obviously, they may have just put that there for now, and it might be a target goal or who knows what. But if you're excited about that game, then maybe it will be here sooner than later. And that's pretty crazy to think about, that game's been around. Like, I hope that's true though, too, right? Because they waited this long to show it off. Then don't
you
make
say
people...
sooner rather than later, but this is the later timeline. I think. Like they've been talking about that game for so goddamn long.
I meant from actually like the radio silence being lifted to
sure.
A couple of weeks ago or whenever that was in July. And I don't know if there's much merit to this. I'd be curious what y'all think about this. Crash 4, which was recently shown off and announced on its website. Some people have noticed that in the like code on the website for like where there's a drop down menu for like platforms or something like that, you know, where it says Xbox and PlayStation, that in the code, there's some code that's being unused for a Switch version. Now, what do y'all think? Do you think this means they will 100% Switch versions coming out at some point? Or does this confirm anything? Website code?
No, I think it's just a placeholder. Honestly, I don't really put too much stock into it. Things like this have happened before, where people will inspect element parts of a website to, you know, to mine information or get information about what's coming. I'm not ruling it out, but you know, a inspect element or some code found on a website.
Yeah. If
that's the best you've got, that there's a Switch version coming, then you know, you need to give me something better than that, you know.
Right.
People don't tell their web developers to that kind of detail, right? Like you tell them that when you want them to put it up, and they might do it in advance because they might think that might happen, or they might just have copied that from some other project or something. I don't know. But I'm a little skeptical of this one. Matt, David, what do y'all think?
Yep, I agree. It's probably just an HTML template that they copy pasted and put a standard HTML template that they used. It just happened to have a Switch logo on it.
I mean, I would love it if it did come out. If it does come out, what I saw of the game when they showed it off looked really good. Like it took me back to the old days of Crash 1 and Crash 2 on the PlayStation, and I thought, wow, this is, you know, I haven't been excited about a Crash game in a very long time, and this one kind of got me interested about looking at it again. And man, I mean, I think the Switch would be the perfect platform for a game like that. So hopefully they prove us wrong and they actually do announce it. But based on what I've seen and the information so far, I would say no, I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm with you there, MVG. I think that it's like pretty much a moot point as far as I'm concerned, because I'm expecting this to come to the Switch at some point. I mean, it took them a year to get the Insane Collection and the Spyro trilogy on the Switch, and I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be the same this way. And I mean, those games, you know, took like a graphical hit, but still played perfectly fine. And I imagine they could pull the same thing off with this port.
Yep.
So I'm not too concerned about it, but that would upset the people that are all claiming that this is proof that Crash is coming to Smash. So, so we'll just let it slide. And
developers troll, man. Like, if I'm building a website about a video game, I'm going to put like Vita and PS2 and, you know, Wii U and
Sega Dreamcast.
Yeah, Dreamcast.
Sega Dreamcast.
Yeah. Nice. And Crash 4 was shown off in the recent Sony State of Play that they did. It opened it up, and then they showed off a handful of other games, and they spent a long time talking about Godfall. I understand. I gave up on that part of it.
I said this on our Discord chat, but I'm a simple man. When I see Godfall gameplay, that's when I walk away.
I got a confession. I didn't actually even watch the State of Play. I didn't really think it was particularly interesting. And when I kind of caught the cliff notes after the show, I was like, yeah, probably the right thing to do.
Yeah. Though, I mean, there's definitely a standout for me, which was, I'm a huge Spelunky fan. So seeing anything more for Spelunky 2 was very exciting. We got a release date for Spelunky 2. Unfortunately, it seems that it's coming to PlayStation first and then PC shortly after, with no mention of any other platforms. Hopefully that comes to Switch, but either way, I love that game so much. Like, I'm not I'm not going to like wait for a potential Switch port on that. I'll be buying that for PlayStation when it comes out.
And I feel like I just had to make this comment. I even put it in the notes. Watching State of Plays reminds me of those things that happen at movies now before they show the previews. I feel like it's the same tone because they'll be like, it's some sort of psychological trick they're trying to do where they're like, like we just showed you Crash Bandicoot 4. And you're, and I'm like,
and sorry for some of our listeners, movie theaters are things that used to be open where people would kind of congregate and all go together to see a movie at the same time.
If you're listening,
it was a relic of the past.
To archived version of this 10 years in the future.
The only thing it needs to be to finish that idea of movie theater previews is Maria Menounos.
Yeah, sure.
If you don't understand that deep cut of AMC movie theaters, she's an actor that's featured in many of those.
You're right, though, Patrick. The State of Plays do have like big Regal pre-show energy.
Yeah, that's what it is. The pre-show show. Regal or AMC pre-show.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit last week, or a lot actually. We got us a little bit fired up about the Spider-Man exclusivity on PlayStation for a game that none of us are excited about anyway, the Avengers game. And I guess that it's Crystal Dynamics, right? They had like some sort of limited press junket or something where they got to talk a little bit more about it. And I guess they just kind of said that, because of Sony's relationship with Spider-Man and that kind of stuff, that's why they got to do it or something like that. Did this satisfy your objections, David and Matthew?
No.
I mean, the game looks like trash. So how invested are we in trying to fight the good fight on this one? Because like everything I've seen so far, just this game looks really, really bad.
Yeah. It's not for me. It's like, it looks worse than Marvel Ultimate Alliance. And that's like basically a Wii game, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't care about this game in particular. I think for me, it's, we talked about it last week, but it's the precedent. And I think we'll be seeing a lot of this from Sony, as maybe not with this next news item that we have coming up. They might be able to sit a little prettier than we thought with the launch of these new systems, but it's like, I just don't want to see this happen with every single game because I think it just fractures the community more and we've talked about a lot how, Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony are all trying to do different things this generation. So like purposefully like throwing shade at the other, at the other big studios, like doesn't really seem like the best use of your time this generation. And I'd love to see more playing along and being nice with each other. And I think everybody would do better from that personally. But I'm also a consumer and I like pro-consumer stuff.
Yeah, we could talk about this. This is a huge debatable topic. It's just to point out, like Imran Khan, he's a former editor of Game Informer, kind of said that Sony, because they're winning, has tons of money and they're spending, millions and millions and millions of dollars to buy these exclusivity rights or DLC or privileges, depending on the game. And to your point, David, we're definitely going to see more of this. And I hope we can talk more about what this means for the consumer, and the reaction to it, because we respond negatively when, Activision does this and they buy up and gobble up all these companies. But this is sort of the same way of buying up rights or exclusive rights to DLC.
Mm-hmm. I'm more pissed that they're gatekeeping Spelunky too, man.
Fair.
Well, David, you hinted at this, but they have officially given us a launch window sort of for the Series X. They said November, but then also this happened just today, I think, the day we're recording this, but also Halo Infinite was delayed to 2021. So it is no longer a launch game, which makes you wonder what launch games there may or may not be. And also, like
a bunch of Xbox One games is all they've got.
Yeah. So also, is this probably a good thing for Halo, though? Like, I know last time we were talking about Halo Infinite, everybody's thoughts were it didn't look so great when they showed it off.
I think it is a good thing for Halo.
Me too.
It's a blow for Microsoft. Obviously, it's not something that you want to delay going into the busy part of the year. And look, you're right. I mean, what are they going to launch the system with? And I think for the first time in the history of video games, probably not true, but we're getting a console that doesn't have an exclusive first-party title. Like I think the Medium and maybe Tetris Effect is coming with the Series X on launch. And other than that, you get to play, obviously, a bunch of third-party games that are across the platforms like Assassin's Creed and Cyberpunk. So there's still plenty to like about the Series X. I mean, on paper, it's still the most powerful system. So if you want to play, the best version of Cyberpunk and Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty, in theory, you'll get it on the Series X. But, I mean, they don't have their flagship game that's launching with the system. And if I go back and think about, the 360 when that launched, and even the Xbox One, it had Forza and it had Rise and it had a couple of other Killer Instinct and I think maybe Dead Rising as well. Maybe that came later, but it had some launch titles. The 360 had a pretty solid launch title lineup of games. I mean, this is really unprecedented, and it really just makes you wonder, do you really need to buy a Series X right now? Is buying one for the holidays the right move? And I think a lot of people are going to have to ask themselves that question, whether it really is, or maybe they should just wait until whenever Halo Infinite actually gets announced for 2021, or a date for 2021, when that time will come. But I think Microsoft, I would say that they have a lot of thinking to do between now and the rest of the year to figure out how they're going to get out of this, because I think it's not good for them.
I think they were already in kind of a weird situation of their own creation, because like there wasn't even really, like, if you wanted to get Halo Infinite on the day it launches, there wasn't even really that big of a reason to get an Xbox Series X for that anyway, right? I mean, that's
right.
Coming out for Xbox One. It's seemingly coming out for PC at the same time. It'll probably be on xCloud at the same time as well. So it's like, I can see, I mean, I'm sure this wasn't a decision that they made lightly, obviously, like they clearly, I feel like I'm getting some elements of like Sonic the Hedgehog movie fan blowback vibes from this.
That might have been the like final straw or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that had to have played something into it, but I mean, I think this game was also just in development hell and was having issues already, but it's like, I think the fact that they are kind of building this online platform sort of situation made the pill a little bit easier for them to swallow as a company. Because, that's not really the game they're playing anyway. It's like, we want everybody to have an Xbox Series X and no other gaming platform. That's not their strategy. So I don't know. It does suck though. And I think it's like, it's going to make it a lot easier for Sony to kind of coast into this, this launch as kind of the winner, I'd imagine, but only time will certainly tell. But Matt, do you have thoughts on this?
The only comparison of a console launch that we have is the PlayStation 2, which launched with like 29 games, but no, as they say, no bangers of a game.
Hey man, the bouncer was awesome.
Yeah. that didn't come as a launch title.
Oh, okay, never mind. Fuck it, I'll delete that.
Well, it came with like that fireworks game, Fantavision.
Okay, that game was tight.
Yeah, Tekken Tag, Time Splitters, Unreal Tournament, X Squad, and some other games, but no like Sony exclusive games. So it can be successful, but I just think we're in an era and we're in a time where people want to spend their money on games right now.
Yep.
Because they need something to do, and they want the latest tech, and because everyone's at home, it's more likely that they might spend it somewhere else.
Mm.
I think the delay has a lot. You mentioned, does the blowback from the showing of the game have any impact on the delay? I think some of it is some of that is true. That the reception they got, they realized they were probably further behind than what they thought they were based on public feedback. But also, COVID obviously has been a major factor for 343. I do know I know some people in the industry, and the word was with 343 was when COVID hit and they had to basically send everyone home and get hooked up to their VPNs. They were literally down for about 2 weeks, like nothing was happening. They were just figuring out their infrastructure. Now, 2 weeks doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're running against a tight project plan, you're coming in hot with a game. then that can really affect a lot of things. And
It's like crunch time already.
Absolutely. So, I think it was just a combination of all sorts of things that really led to this. I think my biggest question mark is, why did they delay it now? Did they really feel like they had a chance of going live with this game in November or in the holiday season? And I just wonder, who made that decision to say, yeah, we're still on target, and then all of a sudden say, oh shit, we're not going to make it, and we don't even know when we're releasing the game next year. Like, we haven't committed to a date, so it could be 12 months from now before we see the game get launched, right? It could be holiday 2021. We don't know what they're planning, and for them to actually not to commit to a 2021 date, I would be a little nervous, about if I was a Microsoft Halo fan, which I am, but I mean, about when I'll see, the next version of Halo, because no one really knows, what state it's in and when it's coming out.
And then real quickly, before we move on from this topic, it sounds like, we've talked about them really going hard on Game Pass, and there's been some rumors that there might be some other big Game Pass information coming up. Is that why they're able to do this? And are we going to maybe see some really strong arguments for Game Pass, and that's the reason to get a Series X?
I think so. I mean, if you ask me how I think they're going to play this, I would expect that when they launch the Series X, that they will offer, I don't know how long the duration will be, but some amount of time that you'll get Game Pass for free, where you can basically play anything you want, and it's we're sorry, and we'll get you the game as soon as we can, but for now, enjoy 2 months of free Game Pass on us. Play anything you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, can you imagine, just zooming out of what you just said? MVG was like, we're going to give you free games because we delayed Halo. That's just the power of the forerunners in Halo, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's also the power of Game Pass. I mean, that's one thing that they have on Sony, because Sony doesn't have anything to compete with Game Pass, and I think, and Microsoft knows this. I mean, they're not dummies, but I think Game Pass for them is really their ticket to the Series X selling,
agreed,
and launching this year without a flagship game as a part of it. And I think if you do bundle Halo with the system in some capacity, then I think people would jump on board. And let's not forget, there's two systems, right? Well, potentially two systems, the Lockhart system and the Series X. So I don't think Microsoft really cares which way you go, but I do think that they want to push people towards, the next generation.
Mm-hmm. And unless there's more to say about those things, we'll just knock out these last couple of things real quickly. We talked about PlayStation 5 and Series X, but perhaps the most anticipated new game system is the Intellivision Amico.
Very good.
And if you don't know what that is, then I don't really either. Matt, care to explain?
Yeah, Intellivision Amico is it's an Android retro console that really focuses on retro games. So it will play, games like Breakout, kind of HD reimaginings of classic games, not these AAA games, probably more reminiscent of classic Intellivision games or Flash games, just with higher quality graphics and audio. And they have a few secrets up their sleeve, which is the latest one is Earthworm Jim 4.
I think we talked about this a while back, but they've actually shown off something for this game, the new Earthworm Jim game, and it's not that great looking, or it's not.
Yeah.
I saw the reveal, and there wasn't really much there. It was probably about 15 seconds worth of. I didn't want to call it gameplay. I mean, it was really just more of a cutscene, I guess.
It was just a worm in a suit, man.
Yeah, and it sounded like they used just the same sound effects from Earthworm Jim 1 and 2. I mean, it didn't sound any different to me. So I didn't really know what to make of that. Like I've played and enjoyed Earthworm Jim on the Sega Genesis back in the day, so I really like those games, and I definitely had a passing interest in what this would be, but it just seemed like that it was just a very, very short teaser. It was like, the Fable thing on the Xbox event. Very, very similar to that. You saw a little bit of something, but you didn't really see anything.
This has got to be the Intellivision Amico's like only get, right? Like, right?
Yeah.
Like they're just going to lose money on this, right? Like, I don't understand.
It's giving me major Ouya vibes for sure.
Ouya. Yeah.
I think you're asking is like, who's the Intellivision Amiga for?
Yes.
I'm not sure. I'm interested in it just for a sense of like, it feels like one of those consoles that'll come out that like people will play for a little while, and then like 4 years from now they'll be like, oh, remember this console? Remember that weird screen controller with like buttons on the side? It came out with Earthworm Jim, and Tommy Tallarico from Video Game Live pitched it. All of that is like fascinating from a collector's perspective.
It'll make for a really nice YouTube video from Scott the Waz.
All of y'all should watch Tommy Tallarico just reveal this console. He's the best hype man.
Very good.
And then lastly, just wanted to mention that GDQ, the Summer Games Done Quick, is coming up real soon. This Sunday, I believe, is when it starts.
Awesome.
We're always fans of that here on the podcast, and so I want to mention that. And hopefully that'll be a fun thing to take our minds off of all the things going on in the world.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing a remote event this year, which I think speed running probably lends itself well to. But yeah, I actually just looked at the lineup and schedule of games for this year, and it's got some pretty hype stuff on there. So I'm always excited for a Games Done Quick.
Lots of retro games and stuff too, which kind of is what our main topic will be about. So that's it for the news. We're going to take a real quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk with MVG a little bit about his channel and a lot about the Gigaleak and what that is and some of the repercussions of that. All right, so we are back, and we are talking today with Modern Vintage Gamer, MVG, and we're going to be talking about the Gigaleak, and we'll explain a little more about that if you don't already know. But first, MVG, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your YouTube channel, and maybe that will elucidate why we asked you to be on this episode?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I started out as a software developer, and after graduating from college many, many years ago, working in just kind of in IT as a programmer. I got into the game dev side of the house, and I got more into the homebrew side of things when consoles started becoming really popular in the 2000s, like the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox in particular, and started just writing homebrew software for multiple different systems. And after a while, you get, as time goes by, you kind of get older and you start to grow out of those things. And one of the things that was interesting to me was YouTube. Like, I saw this platform that felt like, it could be something that I could talk about my experiences and some of the things that I've seen and some of the systems that I've used and some of the mods and the things like that, some of the hackings that I've seen and some of the systems, the way that they were, hacked and defeated from a security standpoint. So I decided that I would kind of dabble with the YouTube stuff. It wasn't something that happened overnight, certainly. I mean, my channel started in 2007, but I didn't really get into it probably until about 2015, where I don't want to say that I, got serious about it, but it was that kind of that side hustle, that you would do. You'd make a video once every couple of weeks, and after a while, I mean, I just kind of learned the art of making content and what that means, and for me, I think what I bring to my channel and what my channel is all about is it's a retro, gaming channel, but it's all about the tech side, and it's all about kind of the underworld or the underground stuff, like how security was defeated on the Wii, or how the Xbox was the DVD drive was defeated. But there's also a part of the channel that I really like, and that's kind of the deep dive into some technical things that people will see in a game system, but they don't really know how things work. So, for example, I've talked about, how the graphics work on the original Nintendo Game Boy, for example, which was, a very, very cheap and very low-powered system, but it had a pretty sophisticated graphics system in there. So, just kind of bringing something. I'm not saying that, everything on YouTube is the same, but just bringing a different, unique aspect to video games, I think a lot of people really, really appreciate. And it's something that I want to talk about as well. And I really enjoy it. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of the elevator pitch of what I do. And, but I do mix it up a little bit, as someone that has a development background, I will talk about some development topics as well. So I try to keep the content, interesting, and I don't always like to just do the same thing, week in, week out. So
yeah, you're porting the videos where you talk about like how like some of these impossible ports get made are some of my favorites of the videos that you've done. And I do have to say, I did mod my Vita finally after watching your Is It Worth It to Mod Your Vita video.
It absolutely is worth it to mod your Vita, I think, by the way. But yeah, I mean, I'm just as curious about how things work than, other people. So if I see something in a video game, I want to learn how it works. I have that part of me. And if there's an interesting tale to tell that I can, roll in a 15-minute video that people will get enjoyment from, then yeah, I mean, I think that's something that I would definitely do on the channel,
Awesome.
Yeah, and we're fans here, so thanks for sharing that too. And I think it's fascinating. You've been on YouTube since 2007. Like, that's pretty early for YouTube. YouTube was only around for a year or two before that, right?
Yeah, I mean, this was back in the days before, there was no monetization and all the stuff that you see these days. But
back when Google Video was a competitor.
I think Just in Time was around, and there was all these other services that were going on.
That's
Real Media or whatever it was called, I don't remember. But it's been a minute. But I do want to say that again, that I only really got serious about it, maybe in 2015 or so, where I felt like this was a fun thing that I could do. And, when you get monetized as well, it really does motivate you to push yourself harder, to see where you can take, your brand. And, a lot of people, will not succeed for various reasons, or they just feel like it's too difficult. There's definitely a grind involved there. And no question about it. I mean, people like Spawnwave, I mean, he makes a video every single day. Now, I do not have the time to make a video every day. I do one once a week. Maybe I'll drop a midweek video in, but even that is a massive commitment for me. So, I have nothing but respect for creators that just, grind content.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a hustle.
Well, then
definitely.
Maybe we can talk some about this Gigaleak then. And I don't pretend to be an expert on this. So y'all, please jump in, correct me if I'm wrong. But, we've talked about this on the show over the last several months, because this has kind of been an ongoing thing, that there are some, we call it a leak, but it's more, like I said before, more like a theft or a hack. There was a bunch of files and things stolen or taken from, believed to originate from a company called Broadon, which is a company Nintendo worked with that now I think is owned by Acer, as I understand it. And that this might date back even like a couple of years ago to 2018. There were some like big hacks of Nintendo stuff, and I don't pretend to even understand or care about the drama involved, but it sounds like maybe there was somebody who would pretended to have some Pokemon stuff, and then some of this was leaked with a name like Fuck Ganix, who's that guy? I don't know. We can get into that if we want to, but like, wait,
let's get into Discord drama. In this episode.
Exactly. But just tons of data that Broadon had was dumped on the internet over the course of several different dumps back in May and July of this year, which like source code, concept art, all kinds of things, tools and audio clips and all kinds of stuff. So we've talked a little bit about the show. MVG, you've got a couple of good videos on this. So we don't have to get into all that's in there, but there is so much in there, and I guess it seems like people are still kind of finding stuff. And some of it's just weird shit too. Like there's a picture of Toad smoking a cigarette, it looks like, or like pixel art.
But it's like part of I think it's like a bunch of Nintendo characters like
in a building all on the patios. There's weird stuff in here.
Yeah.
Weird early concept art.
Patrick.
Toad vapes now for what it's worth.
Thank you. I was going to say, how do you know it's a cigarette? Could be a vape pen.
I said it looks like a cigarette. Didn't I?
It's the 90s.
I'm retroactively saying that.
Sure.
Yeah. So like I said, this is covered in lots of other places and videos, but there's some interesting stuff out there. Anybody have a personal favorite, or maybe we have to talk about the Luigi stuff a little bit, because that's kind of interesting. That whole Yoshi's Island stuff is really weird.
I know for me personally, and like you said, Patrick, we have touched on this some in the news section of the show in the past couple weeks, but it's like the like kind of massive scope of this leak, quote unquote leak, right, is just totally unprecedented. And I think one of the big reasons why everybody's going so crazy for this thing is that not only are game companies very secretive and they hold a lot of stuff close to their chest, Nintendo especially has always been very, very secretive with their stuff. You know, not only what is coming soon, but, you know, we don't get the coffee table books that come out for like a lot of other game companies, right? And so a lot of the kind of work in progress or stuff that almost made it but never goes to full production is stuff that we would just hear people speculate about. And I think having this kind of treasure trove come out, I think I was reading one of the articles about this recently, and in the comments, someone was saying this is basically like WikiLeaks. I mean, not to say that the leaking of Nintendo information is the same as exposing war crimes from the Iraq War, but it's like, but you know, it's just like something that we never expected to see. And I know me personally, I've got tons of favorites. I keep going to the Reset era threads, where just people are showing off all the stuff. And for me, I love like the promo art.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like the like high res, the stuff that you would see on like Super Mario Broth, like that Twitter channel that shows a bunch of old Mario stuff. Like that's the stuff I love, the stuff that I feel like people could use and like remix and like do different things with. I find that to be really exciting personally, but there's just so much to go over.
I think my favorites, it doesn't sound as sexy as, you know, maybe the different concept art and things like that, but the discovery of different soundtracks in some of the Super NES games, you know, the complete departure of the Mario Kart soundtrack that we all know and love it just blows my mind that there is these different iterations of these songs that we'd never heard of before and were potentially just, you know, in Nintendo's vault that we would never hear, you know, and those things coming out, although again, you know, highly illegal and this leak is highly illegal and you know, it's not a good thing that this has happened. As someone who is a Nintendo fan, you can't help but look at this stuff, right? I mean, you have to look at this stuff. I mean, anyone that would say, you know, you shouldn't be doing that. I mean, but you're also kind of just glancing over, you know, giving it a side eye because you can't help it. I mean, there's just, every day there's like just something new that comes out, you know, and I think, I think this leak is massive. I mean, I think you touched on it very well. This is probably the biggest leak in video games. And the thing that I've heard is that the person that is sitting on this data, and I've heard this, I don't know if this is true, but I've heard that the number 5 terabytes being passed around, that they have 5 terabytes of this data, and every so often they'll leak a portion of it. And right now we're kind of in the Super NES and Nintendo 64 era, but apparently there's more Wii stuff, there's GameCube stuff, there's Wii U stuff coming. I mean, I don't know where this is going to end, and I'm you know, again, I'm just fascinated about where this is going to take us, you know, as far as what we get to see. And I think, you know, Nintendo really, I don't know how they do it, but they need to come up with a way to figure out how to just put a plug on this thing, because you know, the old Super NES stuff and the Nintendo 64 stuff, you know, you could argue that, is it really hurting Nintendo's brand?
Right.
Probably not. I mean, they probably don't like it, but I don't really think it's hurting their, you know, their bottom line in any way, or their brand image in any way. But once you start leaking GameCube, Wii U, which is a lot obviously closer to where we are right now, then I think they'll start taking issue with it, and things may change. They may actively start pursuing these people, and they're probably doing it now.
I'm sure.
But,
Nintendo is very litigious, right?
Absolutely.
So they're not going to be afraid to sue. And like you said, I'm sure that they are looking into it, that they have investigators, attorneys, etc.
As far as we know right now, too, like Nintendo hasn't made any comment on this stuff.
No,
as far
nothing.
as I understand. Yeah. So it's like, they're pissed.
Oh yeah, right. That's true. That is true.
Yeah.
That they're more than likely pissed off about this. No question about that.
This is a thing you said, MVG, that I think is really interesting too about a lot of this stuff that's unused, is that you look at this and I'm not saying this to be like too self-congratulatory or we're better, but like a lot of us on this show do various creative things. So we, like when you do something, the final product is obviously, there's a lot of drafts and stuff that people don't get to see and stuff that's edited out. And that stuff is always so fascinating for what could have been. And like hearing all these, clips or songs and seeing all this art and assets that didn't quite get used, it's so fascinating to think about what could have been. And also, like you said, a coffee table book, like people are obsessed with looking through this. Nintendo, one of the things we'll talk about, maybe like what this means for the future. I really hope this means that people sitting on this kind of data realize, oh, maybe we could actually utilize it and release some of this to fans,
right.
And
well, that's what Radiohead did. Like, I think it was like mid of last year. Somebody had hacked into, I don't even know what they hacked into, but they found all these mini discs from the OK Computer sessions when Radiohead was like, before they were doing that record and during the sessions, they found all these I almost said betas, I guess, demo tapes of a lot of stuff that they were working on. And what Radiohead did was they were just like, all right, well, fuck it. Everybody has it. Let's just release it. We're going to cut out all the stuff in there where we sampled stuff for the rights of the music we don't own.
Cut out
and
the
we're just going to put
smoking.
It out. Maybe cut out Toad smoking, or maybe cut out the Star Fox devs like talking about porn.
Oh,
and
that's
back and forth.
one thing we should talk about.
Right. But it's like, I mean, obviously I'm not saying they should just release all of this stuff, but it's like, at least if anything, this proves that, nostalgia is a hell of a drug and people want to see like what could have been. This is like an otherworld sort of situation where you can kind of like see what could have happened if Luigi had been in Mario 64 or if Yoshi looked like a weird fucked up dinosaur. like there's lots of stuff in there to go through and the appetite's not going away anytime soon.
There's a lot of different things we can talk about here. We kind of started talking about that aspect of it, and there's sort of the preservationist aspect of it too, right? Like a lot of source code to games has been lost, and so there's people out there who are actively interested in that. And then it's fascinating to know that Nintendo has this much stuff.
That's a really good point. I mean, Nintendo basically kept everything, from day one, which is a credit to them. Like I've talked about this before, but if you look at a company like Squaresoft or Square Enix, Squaresoft back in the 90s,
right?
We've heard horror stories about Final Fantasy VIII source code being literally thrown away. So Parasite Eve, Silent Hill, all those games, the code for those games don't exist anymore. They're literally gone. They've been wiped off the planet because for whatever reason, they just had a lax source control backup policy. I'm not sure, but those things don't exist. But Nintendo, since the very first day or close to the very first day, kept everything. And you have to give them props for that. I mean, if, we can criticize Nintendo for lots of different things, they've certainly made mistakes, but for this one, they've done the absolute right thing in keeping everything. And I think it's awesome.
Yeah, just on that, MVG, what you're saying is like the organizational structure alone, if this is the leaker, but I also feel this is Nintendo, of how it organizes this work and what it means for the game, and structurally that organization is just like huge and unprecedented.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like it shows some forward thinking, or maybe, I don't know, maybe not. It's seemingly bitten them in the ass now, but
well, that's the danger, isn't it? I mean, the longer you keep something around on a server, the more chance of getting compromised, right? And security is only as good as your weakest point. And in this scenario, this was the brought-on servers that was hacked. I mean, it wasn't actually Nintendo themselves. It was, they went through, brought-on, which is obviously their partner company that they use for, many of their hardware chips. So, they were able to tap into that and basically pull down the whole thing. And like I said, I mean, any kind of connection to Nintendo servers or to Nintendo, whatever weak point there was, and this was it. And unfortunately, I mean, this is probably something that was sitting out there on a server that was probably not very well secured because everyone had forgotten about it for such a long time. And, and here we are. And I mean, it's a very, very unfortunate thing for Nintendo. But for, like you said, for preservationists, I mean, I think, they're literally rubbing their hands together saying, yes, this is the mother lode right here,
For sure. And something that you had talked about earlier as well, of the kind of the want and desire to kind of ignore it, I guess, and do maybe the right thing and not like give in to people like stealing information. Like there were websites, I'm thinking specifically Glitch City Laboratories is a Pokemon specific website that had been going on for a long time. And they had forums where they would do a lot of kind of reverse engineering to figure out stuff that was going on in the code. A lot of it was found through data mining and stuff like that. And they shut down their forums because they're worried of, the litigious nature of Nintendo coming after them if any of this information makes its way into their wealth of information. Mm-hmm. So they felt it was better to just shut down. But I think it's like, yeah, the question is, though, it's like once it's out there, what's the point of pretending it doesn't exist, right? It's like, yeah, the means and methods of getting it are certainly suspect, but it's, Kafka wanted all his personal works to be burned upon his death, and yet we don't destroy those. You know what I mean? It's like once stuff is out there, it's really hard to ignore it. And I don't think it necessarily should be ignored. It's just kind of like the world that we live in now, and we kind of have to deal with it. And if you're Nintendo, I think that means, strengthening your security and maybe keeping stuff in a closet on hard drives instead of on a server. But I think as of now, it's like pretending that this stuff doesn't exist doesn't seem like the right way to go.
It's like Homer's Odyssey. The sirens are beckoning you and seducing you to look at that sweet beta art so you can look over skinny Yoshi and old Yoshi.
Right.
It's pretty hard to ignore as a Nintendo fan and just like a preservationist perspective.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was struggling, a little bit about whether I should cover this on my channel. But honestly, once I saw Kotaku and Polygon and the big media sites run it, I'm like, I'm doing it. I have to do this. If those guys are doing it, and those guys went pretty deep. They talked about and they showed screenshots and videos and pictures of source code and all sorts of stuff. I'm like, well, I mean, if they've got lawyers going over this saying, "Yep, you're all clear," then I'm gonna do it too. So
someone tell that to Game Explain. They're still pretty careful about that whole thing.
Well, maybe because they get like interviews with Nintendo.
Yeah, I guess they want to be on their good side.
But that does maybe lead us to maybe a brief conversation about the ethics of this, which we've talked about on the show a little bit. But that we've kind of danced around it. But it is tough. Like, I think there's just some broader social questions here too that, you talk about stuff being on servers. This is the world we live in. There's going to be more of this kind of thing. We see every day there's a major company that's hacked and, you get it's almost a joke. Now you get an email. It's like your account may have been, breached and this information may have been stolen. And at first that was scary, and maybe now it rolls off the back a little bit more. And I think that, is this kind of information, is it fair to look at? Is it fair to use? Obviously, like you said, everybody's looking at it and stuff. But does anybody have any other thoughts on sort of like the moral or ethical ramifications of?
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts. I don't know if this is, accurate, but the way that I see this is the prototype material, the assets, the graphics, the sound, all that stuff. I think from a public domain viewing standpoint, I think that's fine. I mean, sure, Nintendo screwed up and that leak got out, but again, you can't help but look over it. But I think where I start to question, you're talking about the emails, right, that were going around, that stuff, the personal stuff.
Right.
I don't really agree with that stuff. That should be something that gets leaked and discussed in public forums and stuff. And to that point, the same thing applies with source code. So if you look at the source code for some of the games like Mario 64, there are comments in there, and they're in Japanese, of course, but basically it's telling you, it's kind of telling you a story about, how this game is being built. And it's almost, in some ways, it's almost like the developer's personal diary. It's his personal writings that are going into that code. So, I asked the question to anyone, how would you feel if your personal diary was leaked and then someone, posted it on the internet, on Twitter? You wouldn't feel great about it. And I feel like the source code aspect of this is where I kind of draw the line as to, the ethical part of it. And I feel like the source code stuff is probably off limits, for me. And I remember the day that this happened, there were people that were tweeting Dylan Cuthbert, who, wrote Star Fox.
Right.
And they were asking, did you do this? And have you seen this before? And he's like, holy shit, where did you find this stuff? And he was, you could tell he was a little kind of flustered about the whole thing, and he actually made a couple of tweets that said, I don't really feel good about you guys posting this source code up right now. I mean, this is my work, and it as someone who's as a developer myself, I mean, I could feel with him on that one. I think that one's kind of where you kind of draw the line. But again, that's just my viewpoint. I mean, preservationists may feel otherwise, that look, it doesn't matter if it's source code, assets, ROMs, it all kind of falls under the same umbrella,
It's definitely where it humanizes it, right? It's like whenever I was on that Resetera thread, and they're like, oh, they're saying some stuff in these emails that are like, blah, blah, blah. It might not be the best thing to say. And it's like, oh, okay, that's where you take a step back and you're like, oh, okay, it's not just like a fun picture of this cartoon plumber that I love that I'm seeing.
Yeah.
But this is like human beings talking to each other in conversations they never thought anyone other than the two of them would ever see. And, so yeah, it definitely at least puts a perspective on it, and you say, it's like that's the point where you draw the line, the emails or the source code or whatever. But any of these people that worked on this stuff could have their own personal line where they draw on any of the stuff that's been
absolutely
leaked. And Nintendo, certainly the line is as soon as any of it, right?
Yep.
So. Yeah, so it's definitely a gray area, but it's not stopping us from making an episode on it.
Another great reminder, if you need it, to never put anything into email that you wouldn't want read aloud in a courtroom.
That's true.
Or a text message or anything. Just have to say that.
Just only use smoke signals and semaphore. That's all the only safe method.
But we talked about this. Maybe we can, I'm happy to jump back and forth to anything, but like, will more information be leaked? Like, what's next? You said maybe more recent consoles and that kind of stuff, and that might get Nintendo even more up in arms. Yeah, it sounds like there might be more coming, and it's weird how they've kind of been doing this. It also makes me wonder, like, why? Like, who is this person, and what is the point of it too?
It's a great question. You have to wonder what the motivation is. I mean, sometimes people leak for different reasons. I mean, you would do it for some buzz. I mean, people do it for that adrenaline rush, right? That you were the one that did this, but there's also could be money involved. I mean, we don't really know kind of the motives behind it. And I think, what I've been told, and look, I don't necessarily know. Well, I don't know the backstory about who it was. I know we've heard about this person, Amos Clark, but I've also heard differing stories that it wasn't him, that it was someone else. But one thing that I did hear that came out of it was whoever it was basically gave it to, I'll say 10 other people. And between those people who were anonymous, they're kind of, drip feeding these leaks. So you don't necessarily know who the persons are that are doing this, but it all stems from 4chan. So I think everything kind of starts there that these things start to drop. But I mean, I don't really know, how it's going to play out as far as what's next, but it seems like they'll hit you with a couple of leaks quickly, and they're pretty major ones, and then they'll go radio silent for a while. And I feel like right now we're kind of, it's still the fallout from the last N64 leak that people are still going through and finding things every day. But eventually another one will come up, and I think that's the part where Nintendo would be very nervous about, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, if y'all have any thoughts on that too, please share. Maybe we can also talk about like what does this mean for the industry or for Nintendo or for fans or that kind of thing. Like, does this make Nintendo more reclusive? Does this make them realize people have an interest in this stuff, so they do put out some art books, or both, or
I think they will never talk about this publicly, and the only thing that they'll ever talk about is if they actually, like you said, start slapping lawsuits on individuals, and then maybe making a public statement on why they're doing this. But I wouldn't expect them to acknowledge this in a public forum.
Yeah.
I mean, it took them years to even say the words Joy-Con drift. It's not gonna, they're not going to talk about this right off the bat. But I think obviously the optimist in me would love to see them be like, oh, there is a real yearning for this kind of stuff, and nostalgia is a hell of a drug. We want to see that kind of stuff. But it's like I can't see this being anything other than a bad thing as far as Nintendo's let's call it transparency is concerned.
Yeah.
Right. I think that this will shut them down even more. And I think, because we've seen this kind of stuff in the past. It's like whenever, PictoChat was used by predators to like pick up kids, they were like, cool, okay, no more online communication whatsoever on Nintendo platforms. You know what I mean? And it's like, now that this stuff is leaked out, they're like, cool, we're not going to let anything like this ever happen.
We're going to store it in the closet, like you said. Yeah.
We'll store it in a dark closet on a hard drive or on floppy disks or whatever they need to make it unhackable. Right. And so and not just Nintendo. I mean, I think that other big studios and other producers and are taking note of this. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure, I work for a company that has lots of stuff under NDA. Like, if a huge leak like this ever happened to us, that'd be devastating. You know what I mean? So I think it's like a wake up call to not just people in the gaming industry, but everywhere that, like you said, we're in the culture of leaks. We're in the culture of hacks. Like, you have to be smart about where you put your stuff. And I think this is only going to increase paranoia on Nintendo's part.
I was going to say, if you're Sony or Nintendo, Microsoft, or a big publisher like EA, or, someone that's had a lot of history, that's been around pretty much since the start, if you got a couple of those beat up servers, in the server closet, I would be looking at those and getting those things replaced pretty quickly, and I think a lot of companies are probably looking at this now and saying, look, this is probably a wake up call for us. We probably need to do an audit of all our stuff and make sure that everything is locked airtight.
What were you going to say, Matt?
Yeah, I was just going to say, that just makes me think of if we got a Gigaleak about some other company, like what it would mean for the industry, like from a company like Rare or even Lionhead Studios and Peter Molyneux's studio and all the stuff about Milo, to seeing all of that content.
Right,
that'd be wild. But I was just going to say, what does this do to sour business relationships? And from a process perspective, if it's like, if Nintendo was storing these images and these files on Broadon's servers, on their company servers, and exchanging them electronically, then that probably increases security, increases the process of let's say Nintendo's working with Ubisoft for Rabbids, and that might be like, we'll give you this asset, but you have to sign this and have this kind of VPN on our server. And it takes so much more work, and the more processes means longer development time because you have to do just more secure work.
And in this age of everything being remote and that kind of stuff, where things have to be online and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Things just take longer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a dystopian thought a little bit. So I don't want to end on that. But I think we should wrap up pretty soon. As we've talked about this for a while. So what are some of the other big thoughts or closing thoughts, takeaways, any other final thoughts before we move on? Anybody has?
I'm looking forward to, we're in 2021. COVID is officially cured. It's all over.
Officially cured.
Yeah, whatever it is. But we start seeing maybe some art galleries, like I Am 8-Bit doing some covers of some of this art, really focusing on some of the persons of color in like the Starbucks asset leak. And
yeah,
and
that stuff was really cool.
Just like seeing what some content creators can use and be inspired by some of this art and what it might look like next year.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I it's hard not to be a little doom and gloom about the prospect of it, but I think at the end of the day, like, we've got some like really interesting stuff to go over right now. And I think ultimately this is only going to help my GameCube emulator that I'm working on whenever the GameCube stuff is not. But I think, obviously you want to be optimistic. And I think I'm just fascinated by this stuff. You know what I mean? And I think like, I can't help but look at it. And I think also I'm somebody who loves working with like already created art and doing mashup stuff and stuff like that. So that's the kind of stuff that gets me really excited, honestly. Like I think my biggest takeaway from this whole thing was hearing the Star Fox 64 like voice samples uncompressed, and I'm thinking like, man, think of like the fucking like vaporwave albums that could be made with these samples. You know what I mean? It's like this stuff is part of the public record now.
Yeah.
For better or for worse. And it's, in a postmodern world where everybody builds on everything that already exists. I think that, I come from a perspective. I've always thought that copyright law and intellectual property laws, while very important, have always been way too strict. And I think that the world is better when we can grow on stuff that already exists and use that kind of stuff to make new stuff. So that kind of thing excites me. I obviously know that, this is property that has been stolen, and that's got to have problems. But at the same time, I'm not going to be able to stop looking at this stuff, and anything else that comes out, I think is fantastic as far as I'm concerned. I am worried about where it's going to bring the industry as a whole, but it's growing pains, man. The fucking movie industry and the music industry had to learn from Napster and piracy and stuff like that. And I think the video game industry is going to learn from this as well. We're just in new times and we're all moving towards that cyberpunk future anyway. So this is just a kick in the pants on the way there.
Awesome. That's really great. I think we should stop there.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. And that's how you wrap up a segment.
So we'll take another real brief break, and then we'll talk about the games that we've been playing and close out the show. So I have been playing more Hollow Knight. I've been talking about that on the show last few weeks. I have kind of become obsessed with Hollow Knight, y'all. I put it down back in 2018 and I picked it back up recently, and me and my kid got into it and he was cheering me on, which helped because, some of it's hard. And, I was ready to face the final boss and kind of talking to him about like, well, maybe we should do this or that. And he's like, let's 100% it. And I was like, oh, okay.
Wow. Out of all the games.
But he's lost interest now that I'm trying to do that, because it's like me grinding weird things. So I was like, okay, let's find a new game for us to play together. And I fired up Starlink, which I bought on a sale a long time ago and never played, thinking maybe since it's space and all that, he would get into it, but he wasn't feeling it. So we quit that. And, we started playing Yoshi's Island on the, Nintendo Switch Online app together, and he's gotten really into that. And so that's what I've been playing. Which I never played Yoshi's Island before. I missed that one somehow.
Oh, really?
So this is my first, time playing that game.
The game's incredible.
Yeah. It's a really great platformer. It's really tough too. Like he plays it for we pass his controller back and forth, but he's only 5, y'all, so he's not great anyway. But he has a hard time and gets he passes it right back to me. But we're having a blast, so that's really cool.
That's great.
Yep.
Matt?
Yeah, I'll go next. I've been playing 2 games mostly. Played Fall Guys with some friends on PS4. That was super fun. It seems very simple. It's very simple party game, but really fun. Especially leading up to those last few feet of the end when you get the crown. It's really good. I'm looking forward to seeing how that game grows with DLC content and some new games. It doesn't have a whole lot of a variety right now. Probably got 3 or 4 week shelf life for playing the maps that they have and the game types that they have. But so looking forward to seeing what the future might look for that. And then I played Ori and the Blind Forest for the first time over the weekend and beat it and really enjoyed it. Really loved it. Loved the mechanics. It just made me miss Metroid. Wish we can get a nice, smooth Metroid.
You looking forward to 120 frames per second Ori and the Will of the Wisps on Xbox Series X?
I'm gonna try and wait before I play the Will of the Wisp, but I might play Will of the Wisp this weekend, so we'll see.
Okay. Well, it'll give you more frames to look forward to in the future. I've been playing not too much new stuff this week. A lot of stuff I talked about last week, but I have been playing more Paper Mario and the Origami King. I just beat the yellow streamer, and I'm now on the purple streamer.
Is the purple the last?
I don't think so. I think there's one more. I'm on the 4th pipe of 6.
Okay.
If that makes any sense. Trying to finish it so we can do that spoiler discussion, Patrick.
Yeah.
We will
I'm
do
anxious.
that bonus
I'm
episode.
anxious.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying it. It's taking me a long time, and I think the game kind of like grinds a little bit and like kind of slows down more than I'd like, but I really am enjoying the game, and it makes me laugh out loud more often than I'd like to admit. And then just to expand on something I talked about last week when I've been playing a lot of these retro games on my RG350M, that like handheld emulator that I bought. The Super Mario Advance 4 Super Mario Brothers 3 e-reader levels are fucking incredible. Have any of you ever played the e-reader levels for Super Mario Brothers 3?
No.
It's so good. It's like, cause and if you don't know the history of this, like I think that the e-reader was a massive failure here in the US, and they had different things that you could use the e-reader for in this in Super Mario Advance 4. Like you could scan in different power-ups into the main game. So like you could scan in the cape from Super Mario World into any level in Super Mario Brothers 3.
That's crazy.
Which totally broke that game open and made it really unique and crazy. But then they also had full levels on these cards as well. And only, I think 10 of them were released here in the US. But in Japan, there were like 32 or something like that levels released. And on the Wii U, they put all these out in the re-release of that game, of the virtual console version of the Game Boy Advance game. But man, playing some of these levels, it's incredible, because like this was really the first 2D Mario that had been made since, I guess, Yoshi's Island, right? And this was pre New Super Mario Brothers. So this was like Nintendo going back and making new 2D Mario games for the first time in a while. And they do have all this mashup stuff, so you're playing a level and you've got the cape from Super Mario World, but then you finish by running into the box at the end of Super Mario Brothers 3 to get the item or whatever at the end. And it's just so fun. And they're really difficult too. Like, especially the Japanese levels, like they're made for people to only like, get 5 levels or whatever in a pack of cards. So you want to have a bunch of replayability on those levels. And I'm really enjoying it. If you haven't played this before, I really recommend finding like a patched ROM that has all the e-reader levels included. It's like the kind of, I don't know, it just feels so special to me. It feels like the 2D Mario game that no one has ever played that I'm playing right now. And it's a lot of fun. It's Mario Maker, pre-Mario Maker. I really recommend it. I've got some new games I'll talk about next week, but I've just been playing the old stuff for now. What about you, MVG? You been playing anything cool this week?
I've been playing Ghost of Tsushima on the PS4, and I actually beat it on the weekend. So that game was excellent. I started out kind of liking it. I didn't think it was great after I got over the aesthetics of it. It's a beautiful looking game, but it's under the covers, it's really just another Assassin's Creed style game, that open world game where you just, go from camp to camp and kind of liberate them and take them over and ultimately get powerful enough where you can defeat the big bad boss at the end of the game. So the formula was very familiar to me, and I kind of got a little bit of that open world fatigue, probably about halfway through the game where I stopped playing it for a while. But man, there's just something about that game that just draws you into it. Like I said, if it's not the beautiful looking graphics, it's the amazing kind of music soundtrack, or it's just the Japanese theme story, the samurai story behind it. Is all those things just make this game just something that is really kind of special, over just another open world Assassin's Creed style game. So I beat it. I'm actually trying to 100% the game at the moment.
Nice.
So I'm almost there, but I got a little bit to go. But
you and Jordan Fringe, right?
Yeah. Fringe beat it last week, I think. But I love the game. It's incredible. And other than that, I haven't really played anything else. I'm kind of this kind of person that I don't necessarily juggle multiple games at once. I usually just focus on one thing, and I'll usually try to beat it before moving on to the next game. So.
I wish I had that willpower.
David is the opposite of you. Yeah.
Yeah. My favorite game is buying games on the eShop.
Yeah. Man, I just get overwhelmed. I mean, like, it's that thing where you look at your Steam library, you've got like 300 games in there, and you're like, what am I going to play today? And you don't play any of them. It's just that thing.
I think I've always like justified it in my head as like, there might be a day in which, I can't go out anymore and I'll have time to play all these backlog games, but that time has come and gone. Like that is the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
But it's like still I'm buying new games. So
that's
whatever.
True.
It's an addiction at this point.
That is true. I mean, last year in November, I bought a lot of games at Black Friday for the backlog, and this year's been really good for clearing that backlog. No question about it. I mean, we've had some big games this year, but there's been a lot of times, a lot of gaps, in months where you've just got enough time to go through the backlog and finish some games that you're playing.
Totally.
Awesome. Well, that does it for the show then. Thanks so much, Modern Vintage Gamer MVG, for coming on and guessing this week.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me on, fellas. This was fun. And
that was a blast.
It was awesome.
And thanks to Corduroy, who does our music. Sorry, Chris McKeever, we have not played Disney Tsum Tsum Festival.
So close.
If you want to find me, Patrick, online, I am PDYX most places.
You can find me on Twitter, Matthew, MATHYOU.
I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, MVG? Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Modern Vintage G and YouTube Modern Vintage Gamer. I've got Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. Just Google me, you'll find me.
Very good. Thanks one more time for joining us on the episode. That was a great discussion about the Gigaleak. Ethics be damned. I find that stuff fucking fascinating. And if you'd like to find our show on social, folks, we are on Twitter at Switch Headz. We are on Instagram and Facebook at Super Switch Headz. Make sure you join our Facebook group. That's always popping off. We're quite a good community there, and if you want to reach us on the show or have show ideas or anything like that, that's the way to do it. And then also we should have a link to our Discord in the YouTube description of this video as well. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to this episode today. We got a great episode next week, so I can't wait for you to come back and listen to that. Other than that, folks, keep fighting the good fight, keep washing your hands, keep wearing a mask, do all the shit that you're supposed to do. We love you very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.